During his 5-week break between reaching Canadian Meadows at mile marker 703 and him going back on his leave of absence, my dad wanted to fill in San Jacinto. 5 miles of San Jacinto was closed when he got there on March 26th, so he skipped it. Had he known about the Black Mountain Truck Trail alternative, he might have done that instead. On the drive to the trailhead near Paradise Valley Cafe, my grandfather and dad hit quite a bit of fog obscuring the mountains. A Porsche car club thought the windy road was the perfect adventure for this Sunday morning. My grandfather dropped my dad off, then used the facilities, and that was that. My dad was on the trail again. This section of the trail was popular. He ran into 32 hikers that day, but 16 of them were Boy Scouts. He came upon a group of 10 boys and 2 adult scouts who were using the San Jacinto wilderness to prepare for their trip to the Philmont Scout Ranch. A smaller group of just 2 boys and 2 adults with the same troop were taking it slower because they were too young for Philmont. Afternoon thunderstorms rolled in every day during the San Jacinto section. He heard that this weather effect is often called May Gray. The area is covered with trees that have interesting pinkish leaves. My dad had never seen this type of tree before. He camped 17 miles in on a ridge with a great view of the Cabazon. First time in this new one-man, one-pole tent. So far, so good. While he was napping in the afternoon, a couple arrived, JJ and Eric. JJ was from Germany, and she had bounced around the trail quite a bit. She started at Highway 10 in Cabazon and hiked to Walker Pass and then jumped down to the Mexican border. Eric, on the other hand, had recently started at the Mexican border. They'd only met a few days earlier and committed to summiting San Jacinto together for safety. They chatted like they had known each other for years. Funk arrived a little later and considered staying at the same campsite, but he was out of water, so after sharing his plans to summit San Jacinto, he carried on to the next water source. My dad got going at sunrise the next day, which was at 5:30. He didn't have too far to go, but he knew most of the day would be spent in the snow, so it would be slow. At 6 a.m., he passed the spot where Trevor Microsoft Lair fell from the icy trail to his death in 2020. Fortunately, this dangerous spot was snow and ice-free. Not too far further down the trail, my dad did run into some snow, which was good because he was low on water. Throwing the snow into a partially full water bottle is a great idea to slosh it into water again. Then you just drink it through a filter. During his break from the trail, he rethought his midday snack game. He added nuts, M&Ms, and a meat stick to his normal 2 trail bars. He discovered each meat stick has an inspirational message. He could use it. 2 days of massive elevation gain was taxing. He stopped at the first water source on the map, Tahquitz, for an early lunch at 10:30. Despite being the first official and only a seasonal water source, he'd crossed multiple streams on his way to Tahquitz. Each time he elected to use snow bridges to keep his shoes dry. Apparently everyone else had the same idea. Before he was done with lunch, 9 people would arrive at Tahquitz. There was a lot of strategizing. Could take an alternative route to the San Jacinto peak. The actual trail bypasses the peak. My dad had a tight schedule, so he's sticking to the trail. My dad was done with lunch first, and he was on his way. The rest of the day was spent sloshing through the lot of snow. He stumbled upon a trail crew of some kind getting a briefing. While taking a break, he found a pine cone and many pine nuts, so he decided to pick them out. He was wasting his time, though he tried a few, but they did not taste good. He left the remaining fruits of his labor for a wandering squirrel to discover. He was tempted to stay at the Strawberry Junction Creek because it had an outhouse, but the next day would have been too long. Instead, he found a snow-free stealth spot at mile 185. The site was at 8,700 feet, but it didn't get very cold. Because it didn't freeze the snow on Fuller Pass, early the next day would be slushy. Traversing Fuller Ridge is the hard part of the PCT that travels through San Jacinto. From camp to the other end of Fuller Ridge is only 5 miles, but it took 5 hours. The trail was covered with snow, so you had to follow the other boot prints, but sometimes they disappear or split up. Route finding in the snow is difficult and, of course, tiring. Halfway through Fuller Ridge, he found an old stealth camp spot to cook breakfast and take a break. He made it to Fuller Ridge trailhead on Black Mountain Truck Trail around 11. But as he got lower into the desert, it got rocky. The brush encroached from both sides, making it difficult to see the sharp rocks that made up the trail. It was painful and slow. To make things worse, it got windy. At long last, he got to the final mile of road walking and met my grandparents around 5 p.m.
Thanks for picking me up.
They all headed over to Hadley's Market in Cabazon for dinner, and of course, a date shake. Snake count 6. That's right, he doubled his snakes in just 3 days. Day 1, I assure you that the whip snake is in that green bush. Day 2, the southwest speckled rattlesnake really blended in. It was on a section of trail with rock wall to the left and cliff to the right. My dad was doing the snowball trick to cool off when it rattled right next to him. He nearly jumped off the cliff and he dropped the snowball. Noticed the ice to the left of the snake. Day 3, he came upon 2 women, and before he could say hi, one asked how he was with rattlesnakes. The Sobo woman had already walked by, and she was trying to help the Nobo woman get past the snake. The rattler that my dad couldn't identify was 2 feet long in a little cave next to the trail. It wasn't coming out, and it couldn't strike past the mouth of the cave, so my dad demonstrated that you could walk right by on the far side of the trail and be fine. After some encouragement, the Nobo hiker joined my dad on the safe side of the little cave. Trail stops checklist. Saddle Junction? Check.